Welcome, welcome everybody. We are excited today to have Phil, who has 25 years in the industry. So kind of talk to us about about your journey. I know that you're a business coach, you have buildyoursalon.com website, you're an Amazon best-selling author, but where did it all start?
Well, I kind of came into salons the long way. So I came from a very academic background. I did secondary school here. I went to university. I got my degree in my bachelor's in banking and finance. I did a postgrad in law. And then I told my mother I wanted to be a hairdresser. and she was thrilled, as you can imagine, with all that pile of student debt behind me. And then she realized she could get free highlights, and then the conversation shifted slightly, so that was cool. No, but seriously, I didn't really know what I wanted to do, and I stumbled across the salon industry. And I'd been through my secondary education, I've been very badly bullied, physically and mentally tortured, really, by my classmates. I went to a boys' school, which was not a great move, I tell you. And it was only really when I found salons that I found any kind of acceptance, and I've got huge admiration for the industry because it's just so welcoming, particularly to LGBTQ communities. And I kind of went through the salon door and I just went, oh, okay, I'm home now. And that was kind of where it came from. But I had some making up to do. So I was trained by Tony and Guy over here. And I only worked for them for about 2.5 years, and then we said, okay, we need to get our own space. I couldn't wait 10 years to get some experience. So I went into business with my husband, and we still own the salon together today. I don't work in the salon anymore. I came off the floor when we adopted our children. So we adopted my eldest son, and I had to take a step back. Then we adopted his brother, and I took a further step back. So I don't do anything in the salon anymore. But I was a good hairdresser. I was never going to be a great hairdresser, but I know I can be a great coach, and I don't like doing things unless I can do them really, really well. So this is kind of my space now. And then I came into coaching initially through salon memberships. We were the first in the UK to bring memberships into the salon. So I won some awards for innovation. And then I started getting phone calls from other owners and managers asking whether they could get my advice and my help. And I thought, okay, there's some money to be made here. So I wrote a book and started coaching. And then I realized that memberships are kind of, they're the cherry on the cake. You've got some foundations to lay first. So I started becoming slightly broader in my approach with salons. But I only coach salons that employ people. So I only coach salons that have teams. I've got nothing against solopreneurs. It's just not my field of expertise. And that's because over here we have a little bit of a problem in that our new stylists have always come through a very traditional apprenticeship model. And where we have more and more salons now not employing people, we don't have enough people being trained to come into the industry. So we have a massive scarcity of new stylists and beauty, the same, beauty therapists. We have a huge shortage over here. Sorry, that was a really long answer to a very short question.
I love that you said there's a shortage, because the same thing that's happening in the US. I think it's all over the whole world. And
it really is, yeah.
Yeah, they're calling it the resignation, the mass resignation that's happening all over the world. And it's interesting because I love that you said that you found your people. And that's how I felt 25 years ago when I got into this. I actually left dentistry to get into this business, and I felt like I found my people. I felt I was around more down to earth type people that were more schooled in the world, and just a little bit less dry and boring.
Yeah, and I love that whole salon atmosphere, and I love the whispered comments in the staff room, and I love the fact that everyone's wearing too much makeup at 10 a.m. and I just love being in salons and in that space. And that's actually the only sad part of my career now, is that so much is done on Zoom now, and I don't get to be in salons as much as I'd like to anymore. But we have to adapt.
Yes, I know. I'll be in my schools today, this whole week, and it'll be my favorite week of my whole week because most of the time I'm doing these kind of calls, all day, every day as well too. And so our story is very similar in that sense. And so I kind of want to talk a little bit about what you're doing in the coaching industry. What do you think is caused this mad exodus, I should say, out of the beauty industry? And why do you think many people aren't joining the cosmetology school industry or getting into this industry? And what do you think is causing, the shortage of hairdressers?
I think we've had generation after generation of stylists who just don't have confidence in what they do. We've always kind of been almost apologetic for the industry. Unless you were working on sessions and to do with that kind of high fashion side of the industry, it was almost like, well, over here at least, it was almost kind of, okay, you didn't do so well in your exams. Do you want to do childcare or do you want to do hairdressing? And that was kind of the expected if you weren't going through a traditional academic route. And I think that over time we started to believe that. And that was reflected in the prices that we were charging for our work. That's then had a knock-on effect into the potential earnings. And I think over here in particular, because the Brits aren't great at talking about money. You were kind of, in my household, when I was a child, money was a vulgar subject. It was something you would not speak to anyone about in polite company. So there's been this kind of embarrassment over money and this embarrassment over profit. And I say to salon owners all the time, you want to show people that there's an amazing future to be had in this industry, but you drive a crappy car and you haven't been on vacation for 3 years. That's not inspiring anybody. It's not showing anyone what there is available in this incredible industry. And then also on a more negative slant, there are too many salons in a lot of areas, and we just have to get used to the idea that some need to go. And it's kind of been my mission over the last 4 years in particular to make sure that the right ones survive, the ones that are investing in the industry, that they're training the next generation, that they take the standards of service seriously, they're continually investing in their own education. But because for a while it wasn't the right ones, it was the ones that were cutting costs, doing a slapdash job, didn't really care about long-term reputation, no appointment necessary, take a seat. And there was no bottom to it. The services were getting cheaper and cheaper and cheaper. And then it's no wonder at 16 years old that doesn't look appealing and attractive to you, this kind of battery farming approach to hairdressing. So I think we failed to inspire in a lot of ways. I do see now a lot more connection and a lot more links with secondary education. So we're starting to get a positive message across earlier in people's decision making. But I also think we need to be realistic. And I think the days of, taking an apprentice at 16 and then working for you until they're 60, those days are way gone. And we need to adapt to that. And I think as an industry, we've been quite slow to adapt to people having a portfolio of ways to make income and maybe 3 or 4 careers in their lifetime. I don't think we've adapted to that yet. And we still take it very personally when people leave. So I think we've got to kind of get used to the fact that this isn't forever. That also means, though, we need to recoup that investment in our employees a lot quicker. So it comes back to pricing again. So I'd say 50% of what I do is trying to encourage people to just charge a decent amount so that we can get paid properly.
When you talk about pricing, because it was on one of the things I wanted to ask you about, how do you, the people that you're coaching, how do you help them set up pricing? How do you know if your pricing is the right price, so to say?
I think that, well, the first thing we do is we have to kind of liberate ourselves. And if you're not the cheapest salon in town, people aren't coming to you for your prices anyway. There's something else that they're coming to you for. It's because they like you, or they like the service, or they like the job you do, or there's some other reason. I find that quite liberating from the start. And I think what's more important to me is that we build a salon business that supports your life goals. So we always start with, what do you want your future to look like? Where do you personally want to be in 5 years' time? When do you want to retire? What's the end game for the salon? Are you leaving it for your children? Are you hoping to sell it as a going concern? Or are we just going to lock the doors? Are we going to put a manager in so you can be on a beach in Spain somewhere? What's that plan? Then we build the business to support that. And again, I'm going into salons that are paying, the kind of norm over here is you get a salary plus a commission. So you get a basic salary, which covers national minimum wage, and then a performance related commission after. And again, I'm going into salons where everyone's getting paid commission every month, but the salon owners absolutely brassic, they've got no money at all. They're struggling, they're paying themselves less than national minimum wage to subsidize the business. So something's got to change. So it's about increasing. I find it much more exciting to figure out what I want to charge, and then how do I make that feel like a no-brainer. So I would always come at it from that point of view. And so I went into my salon, oh gosh, this would be 7 or 8 years ago. This is before we even got into memberships. And I said, I want to charge £100 for a haircut this Christmas. And everybody just said, well, you can't, because we charge, I think the most expensive we had was like £54. So that's kind of $75, $80 maybe. And they said, well, how are you going to charge £100? I said, I don't know, but we're going to do it. And we need to figure out a way to make that work. So we came up with a £100 haircut. We can't do it anymore because it's too cheap. And so basically you would come in at the beginning of December, you would have a cut and finish with your stylist. Stood next to the stylist would be one of my apprentices, and you could come in every time you had drinks with the girls, every time you had a Christmas party to go to, office work to do with your husband, you could come in, have a free blow dry, so a wash and blow dry with one of my apprentices. And for that you paid £100. Now I sold, the first year we did that, we sold 10 at the end of October. So that was £1,000 in my till. We haven't even picked up any scissors. And I went, oh, okay, this is exciting now. This is fun. So it's much more interesting to me to kind of say, okay, this is what I need to charge. What do I need to deliver in terms of experience that feels like a no-brainer to my customers? So it's about increasing the standards, and a big chunk of my signature program is called 7-star Salon. 5-star won't do it anymore. We have to go beyond 5-star, 6-star, 7-star. What does that look like to your customers in your town? And that particular flavor then liberates you to charge whatever. It's not, we need to get away from this this model of saying, okay, I need to charge this much per minute and it's going to take me 45 minutes to do this service. We need to get way away from that and realize that what we deliver is a transformation, and we make people feel incredible. And that's, there's no price you can put on that, particularly at the moment. And this is where I get very cross, because, sorry, I'm ranting, just shut me up when you're ready.
Right.
But there's so many people saying that there's not opportunity out there, and there is. That just because we've had a really tough time over the last 3 years does not mean that's the same story for everybody. There are people that have been on full pay for the last 3 or 4 years, haven't taken vacations anywhere, they haven't been going abroad for their holidays, they've got money to spend and they want to feel better. And that's where our opportunity is. But we can't keep telling people that they need our services anymore, because they don't. They've been without them for so long. We have to change that conversation. It's not about something you need, it's about something that you really want, and you want to feel better, don't you? And that's where that conversation needs to go.
Yeah, you want to feel better. I love it. This is amazing. And there's a couple of things that I love that you said, and I 100% agree with you. It's the same thing in the United States. So we're dealing with the same issues here. And the fact that you said embarrassment over profit. And it's interesting because Sean and I do, we teach a 6-month course of how to grow or scale your salon. And one of the first things we do is we talk about profit, and we sit down and look at numbers. And it's interesting. And I'm wondering if you have come across this as well. And because we call it profit first, because we want to pay yourself first. And so building that in right into your commission plan or your pay scale kind of situation. But have you come across that too, where salon owners, they don't have any profit and loss statements to show for themselves, to be able to show you, and they have to kind of backtrack? Yeah.
It got a little bit better as people started to adopt Salon software. There was a big improvement as we started to get PCs on the reception desk. But even then, I'll go into really good salons, that are making good money, big teams. And we talk about pricing, and I'll say, okay, but what's this transaction? Oh, that's for Auntie Betty. She's been coming in here for decades. She only pays £30 for it. And these are big salons, these aren't kind of little, 2 stylist concerns. And I kind of think we just need to get away from that. And actually, I try and look for the positive in the last 2-3 years. Nobody expects us to be charging what we were 2 years ago. Nobody, not even Auntie Betty, who's been coming for 30 years. And I find that quite liberating as well. But yeah, an awful lot of people, you know, their accounts are written on the back of a cigarette packet. There's just nothing in place when we go into salons. And I call it the rip it. Okay, so what do you have over there? You have Band-Aids. So we call it ripping off the Band-Aid. And that's when we look at the wound underneath and just see what we're dealing with. And that's a really uncomfortable part of the coaching process. And what I try and do is marry that with something easy, because I know it's going to be a really tough month, but it has to be done. And I just need to get people to the stage where they're falling back in love with their businesses. And that's what I've seen, sadly, over the last 3 or 4 years, is people closing, not because they can't make it work, it's just they don't love it anymore. But I've always said that it's a lot easier to love a business that makes you a lot of money.
1000%.
So for that salon owner or that stylist that has, you know, Aunt Betty for that 30, she's just been locked in forever. Cause, you know, I know we as salon owners, we have some of our clients that are locked in because they were there when we opened. And, you know, the stylists always have a reason of why they should continue to be that price. So as a coach, how would you coach that stylist or that owner to understand the value and it's time to move forward?
Well, I think there's 2 separate conversations there for stylist and owner. And I coach salon owners. I don't coach salon teams. I'm not a stylist best friend, I promise you. You know, I'm going to deliver a lot of news which stylists aren't going to hear. We're going to be putting performance measures in place that they don't want to work any harder than they are at the moment for the same money. So it's a slightly different conversation in that, you know, if it's my name over the door and I'm paying to get these price cards updated, this is what we're going to be charging. And so that's the stylist conversation, and pretty much as far as that goes. I always consulted with my team when we had a pricing review that we need to have pricing reviews much more frequently. So I'm encouraging people to have reviews at least every 6 months. Because then it means that when we're increasing, it's by less, you know, it's $1 or $2 rather than, you know, $5 to $10. So it's a little bit more palatable. And also particularly with, you know, for example, energy prices at the moment, things are changing so rapidly that 12 months is way too long to try and predict what's going on. And it's very stressful. And we still haven't seen over here the hand down from our manufacturers on that yet, but it's coming. We all know some bad news coming on that. So we need to be ready to adapt. Also, I think it's really important to understand that there are ways to kind of sweeten that a little bit. So I would make out that I was doing Auntie Betty a really big favor and tap her very quietly on the shoulder and say, just so you know, those prices are going up in September. But if you book your appointments now, we'll honor your old price until the end of the year. And actually, you know, if she's a loyal customer all those years, she doesn't want to see you fail anyway. She wants you to do well. So much of it is tied up with our perceived attitudes of our customers, and we kind of try and second guess a little. But whenever I've consulted my team, there's always some resistance for your team over price increases. And that comes back to that insecurity I was talking about earlier. But what I always point out to my team is I'm very clear on my ideal customer avatar. My ideal customer avatar is not a 24-year-old hairdresser. She's a business owner. She's 54 years old. I know the street that she lives on, the car that she drives. So actually, I don't care that you don't particularly like the prices, because I'm not encouraging more of you through the doors anyway. And I had this very conversation with one of my stylists. She'd been with us 6 or 7 years, very loyal, very good. And she said, I can't see people paying that. I said, I don't really, you know, with the greatest respect and with much love, you have never paid for a haircut, because you started working here at 17. Before that, your mother paid for your hair. And since then, you've had free haircuts. So you don't even know what it's like to pay for a haircut. I really don't care what your thoughts about those prices are. So we need to, but that comes from a fear around recruitment. I think we call it the tail wagging the dog. There's a little bit of fear around, I think we're being held prisoner by some of our teams sometimes. And we need to have a bit more confidence that actually we are the owner, we are the manager, we are the people that know what's best for the business. We have that long-term strategy and that vision for the business. And these decisions are going to have to be made, whether they're popular or not. And I think if we've got more confidence in recruitment, actually, we're not held hostage by our teams quite so much.
Yeah, so good. And you know, I was actually coaching woman that runs a nonprofit today about the same situation. I said, you're held hostage by your team right now. And I think we all fall into that so often. And I would love to talk about that. And by the way, I love the fact that you're doing pricing reviews every 6 months. I mean, that's huge. Definitely going to take that on for sure. I think
best, if you take nothing else from this today, the best 3 words: prices valid until. At the bottom of everything. So if they come across an old price card, they found one, you know, in the back of a drawer somewhere, they're not expecting to pay those old prices. Prices valid until, and then it will make you review those prices in 6 months' time as well.
Outstanding. I love that. And, you know, part of our course, we spend a lot of time of fixing leadership, right? Leadership skills. And so one of those leadership skills is not to be held hostage by your team. So talk about that. Like, what's the process to help a salon owner, to help a leader to not be held hostage, so to speak, and to actually be a leader?
I think there's 2 strings to it. The first is a marketing exercise, and recruitment is a marketing exercise like any other. It's getting the right job advert in front of the right people and provoking a response, same as any other marketing exercise. So when we see it in those terms, it's less scary to be recruiting team members. And the other thing that I work a lot with particularly with my one-to-one coaching clients, is just making them understand that they've come through an entire process, because most of our salon owners were stylists at one stage. So they've gone through this entire process, years of people pleasing, years of making people feel really good and smoothing out the waves and making sure the experience is very smooth. It's a different skill set when you're managing people. Sometimes you've just got to make those tougher decisions, but it's a lot easier, I think, if we can bring a lot of our expectations back into that recruitment process. I think where we go wrong is we're trying to manage people on targets that they weren't aware of when they took the job. They thought it was going to be one thing and now it's something different. And there's always going to be tension in that circumstance. So if we can, you know, in your job descriptions, I would encourage you to have all the targets you're expecting your stylist to hit. And then if they don't want that, they don't apply for the job. It becomes a lot easier for that ongoing performance management process. And really, when I'm bringing, you know, particularly in my signature program, we're bringing structures in place, because I think it's a lot, how can I put it without annoying people? There's so many coaches working on mindset, and it's so important. Of course it is, because we need to know that we can expand and grow and develop. I get that. But I would argue that 50% of what's being neglected by coaches is just tactics and strategies and frameworks that we can work to. Because without that, and I know why it happens, is because salon coaches are not always confident either, and mindset is not measurable. So, you know, if I can take you from point A to point B in mindset, whether that's valuable to you or not is completely subjective. As soon as I take you through a pricing program, though, you know whether I've delivered value or not. And that's scary for some coaches. I get that. So they get stuck on the mindset stuff. So a lot of what we do, particularly around performance management, is I say, okay, these are the targets we're going to set out. This is how you figure them out. This is the format of the meeting you're going to have each week with your team member. This is how we're going to coach them to achieve those better results. So it's not always teaching someone to fish. Sometimes you just give them the damn fish. And then we can get that result a lot better. And it brings a lot of confidence with it. And, you know, stylists up and down the country hate me because my salon owners blame me. They say, Phil says I have to do this now. And that's okay. I'm okay with that.
Yeah. That's amazing. 1000%. Yeah, it has to be measurable. And that's absolutely huge. I love it.
So what I want at the end of any of my programs is to show you a piece of paper and say, this is how much money you gave me. This is how much we've added to your business. Yeah. What do you want to buy next? You know, it's in my interest for you to do really well on paper.
Yeah.
Talk about the different areas that you offer your services, because you talked about, you know, the importance of framework and foundation, and you talked about job descriptions, you've talked about pricing. So if I'm out there looking for a coach, what are those services that you can provide?
I only have 2 services. I have a signature program and I have one-to-one. I've been through that phase of having a whole library of courses for $197. It's just, I don't like, I call it nibbling around the edge, where you just take one tiny piece of a business and try and improve that. It doesn't work. You need something that's looking strategically at the entire business. So over the last particularly the last 2 years, I've brought all of those programs together and just put it into one signature program that people either take or they don't. But we literally start from the ground up. So the first module is goal settings, and that's personal goal setting, because then we know what the business needs to achieve. So we can start looking at business strategy. Then we go through pricing. So we've got that really sound financial base. And then we go through branding is a really important one. And then we take that into a slightly broader conversation around marketing, which everyone thinks is social media, but there is a bit more to marketing than just social media. There's other things we can be doing as well. We look at team, which is I give people a recruitment process and then a performance management process. And there's a kind of gloomy module at the end where it's time to say goodbye to someone that I take people through as well. Because that, again, that brings some confidence. If you know you can handle that situation and there's a framework for that, then you know that ransom's being paid a little bit when you're being held hostage. We also, what else do we look at? Oh my goodness, you put me on the spot now. We look at systemization, which is a massive one. And what's been really interesting with that is I put the module together because I expected it to make life easier for people just to run their businesses. But actually, it doesn't really matter what your end game is, because if your end game is to sell your salon, it will sell for more if you have systems and processes in place. If you want to go and sit on that beach in Spain somewhere and put a manager in place, that's a lot easier if you've got systems too. So it's adding value to a lot more businesses than perhaps I anticipated. So we go through 3 levels of systemization too. That's a big, beefy module. So we go through pretty much all the, and then with the last module, we tie everything together in a strategy document, because people don't put business plans together unless they're trying to borrow money normally. And even then, they don't look at them after that. So we try and put it together in a document that's kind of a living, breathing thing that you actually refer to. Because I think, and what I fell in love with, of course, is that it's a very emotional industry. But emotional decision making is exhausting. So if we can take some of the emotion out of those decisions by saying, okay, does it align with our strategy or does it not? If it doesn't, we don't do it. That's not an emotional decision anymore. It's a logical decision. And that brings a lot of relief for people, I think, that they're not kind of going with that gut instinct. Gut instinct's always right, but it's a very tiring way to make decisions. So we tie it all together with a strategy at the end. So that's delivered over a 6-month program. Honestly, it gives us a framework for group coaching. So the content is there, and it adds a lot of value for people, but I would say most of what we add is just by getting on a call together a couple of times a week and thrashing out what's affecting your business right now.
Yeah, that's so good. I love the fact that you said that, you know, you can't just piecemeal it and say, okay, if you fix your marketing, your business is going to be fixed. No, it's a big strategy. That's how Sean and I are too with our 6-month course. Your book, I would love for you to talk about that, because you said, you know, it's not just about social media for marketing, right? And so you talk a lot about emails, the importance of emails. Can you talk about that? Because that's a strategy that we're starting to work on in our companies.
Email's having a bit of a renaissance. I really like it. I think there's a few reasons for that. I think the first was everyone got scared over GDPR over here, and they all said, oh, we can't send emails anymore and everyone's going to sue us. Yeah, we've kind of got past that now, and we're having a bit more of a grown-up conversation around what we can and can't do. I think the other thing that people are realizing is that if you're building huge followings on Instagram or Facebook or, God forbid, TikTok, that's not your following, and that can be taken away like that.
Yeah.
Whereas if we have an email database, we can take that database onto those different platforms, reconnect with those people, but it's our list. It's the only list, it's the only audience that you actually own. So it's a really important asset that we build and continually market. And then what's happened during COVID and the huge number of lockdowns that we've endured, it's become a really I'd say vital tool to just keep in touch with people, just to remind them that you're still there, you're still thinking of them, you can't wait for them to come back in, give them a few hints and tips on how they can be looking after their hair until they see you next time. But it's been building that customer connection through the last couple of years. And I think it's really hard to overdo it now. It used to be, you know, if you sent more than a couple of emails in a week, you were a kind of a nuisance to people. It doesn't work like that now. People don't even unsubscribe. They just delete the email and carry on with their day. And when they're ready to read something from you, it pops in their inbox and they'll read it. So I try and encourage people to support all of their marketing efforts with email. I think where we kind of went wrong is we tried to make these very corporate looking newsletters, and it was very impersonal and lots of graphics and lots of banners and things. And people don't like that. They don't want that. It's a conversation between me and you. Even though I might be having that conversation with 2,000 people, it's still a personal conversation. So if we can write our emails from that tack, then that works really well. And again, it's giving people a structure and a framework, because most people kind of go, okay, I want to email. You've sold me on the idea of email, Phil. What the hell do I say? So then we give them a structure and to go through the year as far as the kind of promotions are concerned. So it will kill email very quickly if all you're doing is, buy this, buy this, buy this. That's a really dull conversation. So we change it up a little. So I work on a rotation of 3 promotions. We would have one, which is a big, hefty promotion, perhaps a discount, perhaps a value added offer, perhaps it's a new service coming into the salon. Then we would have a campaign which is what I call the gentle upsell. So it's designed to take customers who have an appointment, they were going to spend a certain amount, and then we're going to sell them something additional, whether that be bringing a friend in with them, or we're going to bolt on an extra service, a second service with a discount, or perhaps a gift with purchase. And then the final part of the campaign on the rotation of 3 is just information. It's just positioning you as an expert, and that acts as a kind of palate cleanser before we go back into trying to sell again. So we work on that rotation, and each of those I would normally say would last about a month. So it's a 3-month cycle, 4 times a year. It doesn't have to go in that order, but it means then instead of coming up with 12 incredible offers for people, actually you're only coming up with 4, and we can position those around what's going on in the salon. Have you got a new service coming in October, or have your manufacturers told you that there's an amazing new product release we can talk about? So we can target those sales promotions to when they're needed during the year. And I find that framework works really well. And yeah, just send more emails is kind of my message. 2-3 times a week would not be untoward these days at all if you've got the time to do it. But if we take away the banners, take away the images, and we turn it into something short and snappy, actually, it's a lot more achievable.
Yeah, I think people get so stuck on all their branding that it has to be perfect, and just unleash it, make yourself human, and people will actually read it, because
it's never going to be perfect. If it's perfect, it's probably late. So let's just get it sent.
So good. I can't wait to read your book. That's amazing.
Oh, thank you.
So we kind of started this conversation with, you said, the cherry on top is memberships. So I want to kind of want to wrap up as we kind of wrap around this. I want to talk about memberships, because on your website you have a membership cheat sheet that you can get with some quick tips. You also have jacksalon.com, which I'd love for you to talk about that as well.
Yeah, sure. So our journey with memberships has been it's been glorious, and it's been the making of the business in a lot of ways. And what I've come to realize is that every business needs some predictable retainer income, particularly at the moment. It's a really useful device. We were struggling with these huge shifts in turnover from month to month. It made it really hard to know when we could afford to refurb the salon, really hard to know when we could afford to invest in training or grow the team. So by having some element of your income just fixed month after month, it's just a joy. And we've grown ours to the stage now. It's about 40% of our income comes through memberships, which is, it's taken a while to get there for reasons I'll come to. But that means all of my fixed costs are covered on the first of the month. That's rent, business rates, the fixed part of all of our wages, all covered. And sometimes the first of the month is a Monday, and we don't open on Mondays. So that means my best business day of the whole month, we don't even pick up a pair of scissors, and that feels really good. And we had some beautiful stories from salons over lockdown, with customers saying, no, I want to keep paying. I know I can't come in and have the services that you've promised me, but I want to support business. I want you to make it through the other side of this. So we had very few cancellations, which was really lovely. Some paused their memberships, understandably, but an awful lot carried on paying, which was just, there's the other part of the opportunity we have this year is there's a massive amount of support and love for small business and family businesses. Our customers want us to do well. They can buy into our story a lot more than they can a faceless corporation. And we need to capitalize on that too. And that's all about building those relationships. Anyway, so we brought memberships in, and initially we had them set up on PayPal, which was It was fine when we had one membership. As soon as we had multiple, and I'm a nerd, I love technology, I just found it really confusing as soon as we had more than one on PayPal. Then we went to a direct debit model, which was good, but it was slow, and it meant that people couldn't sign up during the month rather. They had to sign up on the first or wait until next month, so that wasn't great. And now we've shifted over to using Stripe for recurring card transactions. We get a lot less rejected transactions that way. It means anyone can sign up any day of the month, which is glorious too. The problem is you can't send your customers to Stripe. It has to have a front end. So it needs a website or some kind of payment gateway to go through. So that's why I built Jack Salon, because the Salon memberships aren't really supported by the software companies over here. They keep saying they're going to, but they never seem to quite prioritize it. So I've, kind of been complaining about it for so long. And in the end, I just went, you know what, let's just build a platform. And I don't want it to exist. I really don't. I want it to be built into all the Salon software that we're using, and then I can close the site down. It's not my future by any stretch. But in the meantime, it just helps things along and helps make that process a little easier, because we need to make sure that the payment is tied in with the acceptance of the terms and conditions. And if you don't have some kind of gateway that brings all that together, if you separate those two, then it gets really messy. We need to cover ourselves and make sure those T's and C's are kind of tight. But it just gave me a point of difference to talk to people, and I've been very lucky. I've spoken on some big stages around memberships. I haven't got anyone who's kind of taken it to 100% membership model. I don't think memberships should be for everybody. And I see a lot of salons that try and pitch them to their best customers, which is a real mistake, because they're already profitable. We don't need to worry about them. So in my mind, there's kind of a continuum. So at number one, we have those people that only come to you when they are, they've been given a voucher, or you've done a special on Facebook because you've got a stylist who's not busy tomorrow. And number 10, we've got your most profitable, very loyal, very regular, buy everything anyway. We pitch the memberships at the kind of number 7, number 8s. So it takes a good customer and turns them into a great customer. And I pitch them at those customers that you kind of go, this looks great, and if I saw you just a bit more frequently, we could get you a really beautiful result. That's your membership customer. It's the one that they start the year in January, and they're going to prioritize self-care, and they're going to be in every 6 weeks, and then by March, this time of year, life's got in the way. Memberships help keep them on track. So that's kind of where I see memberships as part of an industry, but it's a win-win. It really is. There's a lot of ways you can do it. You can pitch it to customers in terms of that predictability of spend, which is very valuable to some people, or we can go to the other extreme, which is turning it into kind of a VIP experience, and they get some added extra benefits which other customers don't get, and it has that feeling of exclusivity, and we limit the number of memberships available to introduce some scarcity. Scarcity is the tough one, because by definition the membership is always available. So trying to persuade people to sign up today takes a little bit of marketing work, but it's doable. And I used to run a separate program. Occasionally I'll release it, but it's built into my signature program alongside pricing, because we had a number of people that were trying to bring memberships in on unprofitable pricing, and all that does is magnify the problem. It's a real mess. So we've got to get the pricing right first to make sure that's profitable. Then we can go ahead and build that retainer income.
Wow. And what is the website that people can go to sign up to be a part of some of your programs, to find out more about the memberships?
The kind of the hub for everything is buildyoursalon.com.
Okay.
And that will take you in all the directions that I have available. That's kind of where everything lands. And then we've got jacksalon.com, which is when you're ready for that kind of payment gateway. But over in the States, you have got some alternatives over there. You've got some people that are taking it a bit more seriously, which is great. Like I've said, as soon as we get to the stage over here where it's the norm and part of the Salon software, I can shut that down. I don't want it. Gets messy because it's 2 sets of reports then at the end of the month, and we don't want that. We want life to be easy and not at all overwhelming. So we need the software companies to take that really seriously.
Absolutely. So as we close this out, first of all, thank you for being on today. You're just absolutely amazing and such a delight. I could listen to you for hours. I love your accent, of course.
That's a happy coincidence, because I could talk for hours.
You're amazing, amazing. I'm so glad that Sean found you. He actually found you on Instagram. So obviously you're
Wow.
doing something right with all your
That was the day that I
marketing.
remembered to post something, was it?
It's amazing. And so what would be your last piece of advice? And can you center some of it around recruitment? Because I know salons are really struggling, and every question I see on every salon platform is, how do you recruit stylists? And everybody's like, I don't know. That's the answer that I see. So give advice
Okay.
to them as you close this out.
Okay, so as far as recruitment's concerned, an ad that begins "stylist wanted" is never going to work.
Yeah.
You would not advertise to your customers that way. You've got to hit them straight away with something that's going to kind of trigger a response in them. So think of the reasons why somebody would want to change and come to work in your salon. It's probably because they're not happy where they are right now. Some of that is self-employed people who want to go back into the salon environment because they perceive it as safer in these very uncertain times. So we can tap into that fear. Or we tap into, are you working in a salon where everyone in the staff room is an absolute bitch and talking behind your back? We have a no bitching policy in my salon. So we tap into those things that trigger people. Or we have a lot of salons that don't invest in training. Are you frustrated that your career isn't moving forward? So that will be another. So we've got to find a reason why people would want to apply for your position in the first place. And the first 2 to 3 paragraphs should just be, what's in it for them? That's all they want to know. They want to know what it's going to be like to work for you. How is that going to improve their life, change their status for the better? Then we need something they can buy into. And when we talk about 7-star branding, a lot of that is around your identity and your purpose, because people need a cause to get behind these days. Just having a chair that's comfortable for your customers and an amazing shampoo experience is not enough. It needs to have a story to it as well. So what is the business actually about? And why would I prioritize, applying for your position over somebody else's? What is it about your business that makes me really excited? We can communicate that. And I've always had the policy in my salon that we pay as much as we possibly can profitably. So we pay more than anybody else in town. We charge more than anyone else in town. We've got the highest prices. And I made a customer promise over 10 years ago, anyone matches our prices, we will immediately increase them. We will always be the most expensive in town, but it means that we have the best training and we can pay them the most as well. So you need to pay high these days and show that there's an actual career there, and have that aspirational model where you're showing that it is amazing to be part of this industry. And we go to shows and we go to trade shows, and there is all this inspiration out there. It's not just, really hard work standing on your feet all day, every day. We've got to show them the great stuff that's in the industry too. And my final kind of parting shot would be, the biggest threat to your business over the last 2 to 3 years was nothing to do with you. It wasn't because you didn't post on Facebook. It wasn't because you didn't have a plan for Instagram. It wasn't because you didn't get your branding right on your email. It was completely left field. And I find that really liberating, because we managed that. And you probably won't get anything as big a threat to your business as that again. And you managed to get through the other side of it. And I find there's a lot of comfort in that. And there's a lot of excitement when we realize that too.
Agreed. Yeah. Thank you so much for being on. We'll have to have you on again. So I appreciate it.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a delight. Thank you.
Thank you,
All
Phil.
right,
Have a
Phil.
great day, everybody.